Hello, everyone. My name is Bruce York, and I'm the Director of Carrier Sales and Business Development at Nextivity. And we'll be talking about a little bit of a different angle than my colleagues have talked about previously. And that's how we make cellular coverage easy and do that by working with the MNOs to help solve coverage challenges to the enterprise. So just to do a little bit of a recap, I believe David did an excellent job of giving you a primer on the 5G. I've worked actually quite busy most days explaining to most end customers as well as carrier sales folks that the three different implementations of 5G and the low band, mid band, and high band are quite different. They support different use cases, and that's not widely understood by most end customers. And so at Nextivity, we're taking a slightly different approach with that, and especially within the low band, where we believe that most of the activity is going to start off, at least initially, with the 5G and R radios that are being currently deployed. But then as those markets steadily mature, we will also have systems that address that mid-space or middle frequencies as well as that millimeter wave. And the reason for that is with the MNOs, they all have strategies related to each band and how they plan to deploy it. They'll provide different services and options to their enterprise customers. Like, for example, most operators are identifying the mid-band spectrum because there's quite a bit of spectrum within those frequency ranges for in-building. They'll use the low band for coverage. They'll use mid-band for in-building performance. And then they'll use millimeter wave for high-capacity applications and use cases. You heard Victor mention earlier about the need for public safety. That's also a big driver. Carriers are going quite actively into that space. You have FirstNet with their initiatives with AT&T driving out applications for first responders. You have Verizon's Frontline team doing the same thing. And then you have the T-Mobile Hero program that's also targeting first responders and law enforcement agencies to provide them better services and solutions to serve their unique needs. I'll talk a lot about what Tim has talked about earlier, about our digital lifestyles and all the different use cases and all the vertical markets that we're going after, many of which we're all very much familiar with because we use them in our personal lives. And then we'll work through the agenda here, and then we'll leave some time at the end for some questions. So, our digital lifestyles, right? Almost every aspect of our lives today has some cellular component. If you look at the average household in America today, there's at least 40 connected devices of some type or shape or form. It could be Wi-Fi, it could be Zigbee, it could be cellular, or a combination of that. Now multiply that by the number of people that have subscriptions. We're talking about astronomically large numbers, right? It's just pervasive in everything we do. Whether that be for work, for pleasure, public safety, all areas, cellular is cross-sending all of them. It was also brought up earlier when Tim mentioned about the IoT space. There's another growth market and vector that's driving the need for enhanced building coverage because millions and millions of more devices are being deployed, and many of these use cases are now in areas of the building that were never considered a need for coverage. The stairwells, the basements, the boiler room, all areas where people haven't historically gone, but now these M2M specific industry solutions that are needed to connect to different equipment and infrastructure to help monitor, control, make the building safer, all need to be monitored. This building itself, if you notice when you were walking down the hallway here, the glass doors just above the stairs, this building is a gold-rated building for lead compliance back in 2015. What does that mean? Just like the diagram here shows, the windows, the glass on the outside of the facade of the building is energy efficient. And the physics of that, by blocking UV, is also quite effective at blocking RF as well. So you have to solve that. You have to be able to remediate that. And there's really, as Tim mentioned earlier in his presentation, there's only two ways to do that. And we at Nextivity think we've mastered that formula. So how are the MNOs and the industry rising to meet that challenge, right? We already know that 5G and the higher frequencies are making the problem more acerbated and more difficult to solve. We know that the buildings and the materials are all contributing to the problem. Part of the way that they're starting to address it is a paradigm shift in the thinking. So historically, retention was the primary driver to why a carrier would look to augment coverage. The customer would threaten to leave, and they would need to remediate it for them to retain that customer. But now they're looking at it as a holistic approach, as a customer service model, as how do I better serve my customer? We coined a word called the middle prize, and in this middle prize, it's essentially any enterprise customer from SMB to the really large strategic Fortune 500 companies with any venue from a few hundred square feet all the way to 1 million square feet. So you can imagine that encompasses quite a lot of venues, right? Literally trillions of square feet. And if you're looking for the next, green space where the operators are looking to try to monetize, it's in building, right? The outdoor macro coverages for all of our major operators are very well designed here in the United States. There are statistics about who's better, and they're all fighting for a little bit more speed, a little more capacity, but we're talking about fraction of a 1% delta. But in building, it's a different animal. There's a lot more space to cover, and the metrics are still evolving and being defined for both commercial DAS as well as public safety. Actually, I'll go back, and there's one point on here I didn't highlight, and this is within the enterprise space, and this is one that is actually fresh because I was working with one of the solutions architects at Verizon on this one, where they have large customers who have multiple site deployments. And they've historically used their ruggedized routers, whether that be Cradlepoint, Peplink, or Sierra, and they use these solutions for their LTE failover or business continuity. Now what they're looking to is actually move a lot of these customers off of a fiber feed and take them directly as their main line over cellular. And they're able to do that now with 5G. You couple that 5G network, and as David mentioned, that the marriage of that Wi-Fi 6 with a Cat 18 or Cat 20 router now makes a really fast pipe for all of those enterprise back office solutions. So you heard this mentioned multiple times in the previous presentations about how Nextivity has started to move the needle within the industry. Our 100% network safe guarantee, our ease of installation, all the tools and things that we wrap around it. Basically what we're trying to do is make it easier for our systems integrator partners to be able to deploy more solutions more quickly, and then also help our carrier partners be able to bundle and package this into a neat service that they can eventually offer as an in-building coverage as a service. And where are we helping? We're helping at every phase. We have tools such as our Self-I Compass and our Wave Pro, which allow us to do very quick and effective and affordable site surveys, which for me is a paramount step in the process, right? Because you need to be able to ascertain the size and scope of the problem and then the nature of the venue to understand what the best deployment strategy is. Furthermore, you need to be able to have that baseline to be able to compare the before and the after. Without that, the end customer has no real expectation of what the value that they're paying for is. But when they have a heat map of, hey, this is what your in-building coverage looks like without a system and one with a system, then they're able to see it very clearly that all the areas of their building are covered effectively and all of the KPI and metrics have been met. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, right? I've completed the install. Now what? Has the customer relationship stopped? No, it hasn't. Now I have the ability to monitor those deployments and those installs to ensure that all of the KPIs are met on day 365 as they were on day 1. So now you can see all these pieces and parts are being brought together, and the carriers are now going to begin moving towards this ability to be able to offer this to their customers as another service that's in their lineup of products and offerings. And in the enterprise space, especially, that kind of differentiation is important. It's a common tactic in the enterprise space where customer XYZ will say, hey, carrier 1, hey, I'm not really happy with your service. I'm going to go to carrier 2, right? And so this really helps them quantify, control, and have a managed process in being able to retain those customers, or better yet in this scenario, win a new customer. They may not have great coverage within their venue. You can offer that as a service, you win their business, and then now, once you've solved the coverage problem, the biggest complaint is off the table. You now have the ability to sell all of the solutions on your truck. So whether that's a device, if that's an increased rate, mobile rate plan, if that's an embedded router, it's an IoT solution, it's your MDM solution, everything that they have for business continuity, for UCX, everything is now front and center, and there's virtually no impediment for them to be able to sell to those customers. This was mentioned in the presentation from Tim, and it's sort of highlighted from the previous slide where all of these use cases, this is applicable. And the motivators and the drivers are common throughout. And many of the carrier teams, they have some that are focused on healthcare. They have them on education, K through 12, SLED. They're all going after these same customers, and they know where the pain points are. So a lot of my day is spent with the account executives and the solutions architects and educating them on what options are available to them. And then they're able to bring the customer to the table. And then we have a conversation about, okay, based on the nature of the situations that you're building, what might be the best path forward to be able to resolve and mitigate that coverage challenge. And in closing, what I'll say here is that these programs are designed with the operators in mind because, number one, they want to be innovative as well, right? They're spending a lot of money on this 5G network of theirs and their deployment, and they need to be able to monetize it. And one of the fastest growing areas for every operator is in that middle price space. The ARPUs and the values where they're being judged in Wall Street and where they're being measured in the industry is with those type of customers. And so Nextivity, we've taken on the challenge to be able to be best in class within that space and be able to offer them a turnkey solution that helps them solve all of those enterprise challenges with these types of customers from soup to nuts. And with that, I believe David will be sticking around for anyone who has questions, and I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.